after yesterday's disgraceful performance against Nottingham Forest, and I want to really emphasize on how disgraceful the performance was over the result, because the result we got very lucky to even pick up a point after how we capitulated in that second half against Nottingham Forest. And you know, when you're losing games because you can't win the midfield battle, because you can't win your individual duels, what hopes do you really have for progressing up the table and improving? And I think currently Graham Potter is in the firing line right now. On one hand, one half of the fan base understands he's here for the long term, so they're consciously accepting of the season, knowing the fact that, listen, we won't be defined by how this season goes. There's other future seasons we're building towards and getting ready for. That's when it's really going to matter. But on the other hand, there's another section of the fan base that feels, listen, even if that was the case here, we still have to achieve our objectives. We still have to get Champions League football. I'm still paying money and investing my time to watch my team perform, regardless if we're building towards a future. And if we are building towards one, I want to feel confident that I actually understand what's happening. Because if I'm seeing different tactics and different ways of playing and different lineups week in, week out, the only thing that communicates towards me is a lack of confidence and faith in my manager that he knows what he's doing. I completely understand both perspectives. In today's vid, I want to share my own personal thoughts and opinions. I'm not here to speak on behalf of the fan base or anyone. Listen, we're all same fans with equal weight and value. We should all be involved in this conversation, have a critical one, and share our thoughts and opinions how we want to. So I really recommend you guys, if you have something to say, put it in my comment section in this video in particular. So I wanted to use this opportunity to just understand where we go from here, how we actually got here, and if Graham Potter is the right man. So I hope you guys listen. I hope you actually listen to what I have to say. I'm sharing my thoughts and opinions, and then yeah, let's actually get on with things. But I guess to start with things, for me, one of the main issues that I want to tackle first that has affected not only Potter, but every single Chelsea manager, is this squad. Now, the fact that we're going for Enzo Fernandez for over 100 million for an overinflated fee, let's keep things real, tells you how desperate we are to evolve and change our midfield, which has not progressed over the years. In terms of the identity, we've not really had one. When you look at clubs like Arsenal and Newcastle, is it any surprise to you that they're now in positions of power in the league? Why? Because they understood what club they wanted to be, how they wanted to play, and they've been actively working on that behind the scenes. So back in the day when there was talks of us being like title challengers under Tuchel after winning the Champions League, Newcastle, Arsenal, they weren't in the conversation at the time. And if you were to imagine it like a graph here, you know, we've kind of flatlined, and naturally this season we're plummeting because all of the negatives over the years have compounded right now. All the things we haven't addressed have compounded right now to create this season we're currently having. And what are those things? Those things are not improving our midfield, and those things are not signing the right adequate backup for when first team guys are out. The way we capitulate when Reece James isn't playing, even though he's probably our best player, we should not be that weak where when James isn't in our team, it's like part of the effort, part of the competition is out the team now because the backups are nowhere near his level. These are the things that we've seen signs of for years now. It's not the first time Reece James has suffered with injuries throughout the season, and to this day, nothing has been addressed. So these things have compounded, whereas the rivals around us have been working on plans. Arsenal, you know, the two of the best wingers are Martinelli and Saka that were given game time to developing and working on, signing their Odegaards, getting things working behind the scenes. Newcastle, bringing in Bruma, one of the most transformational effects on a team in the Premier League as well too, and now they're taking our place where we should be. So right now, this is an area that needs to be improved upon. And for me, the only way that, if there was any hope for us now to get Champions League football, it depends on the quality of this January window, because we're going to have to spend. And I think Graham Potter needs at least 2-3 players that he understands that he likes and that get his football to join us right now so we can catch up and get most of those points before this season ends. Because otherwise, it's not looking too good, bruv. It's not looking good. So I can understand that, because this also affected Thomas Tuchel when we lost the wing backs under him too, and it affected Frank Lampard. You know, after that great run of form during the start of the year, once injuries came to Kante, Ziyech and others, everything fell downwards again. And the key denominator that ties this all together is an incomparable squad that isn't fully built to withhold a full Premier League season, because every time injuries come, we start to fall down. So I understand that as a sympathetic point. But maybe one thing I don't necessarily understand from Graham Potter, if I focus on him right now, is the fact that it does feel like he hasn't found that one united way of playing. Now, I can understand that when injuries come to the wrong guys at the wrong time, like, I don't know, Reece James or Ruben or Fofana and Chilwell and stuff like that, that could force you to change your plans that you've been working on just like that, because now you've got a game in 2 days' time. So I understand that from a sympathetic point of view. But on the other hand, you'd still like to think as a fan that what you're watching under him, there's a sense of progression, that the next game at least you can see a small improvement in this aspect, that aspect, that aspect. That gives you confidence that there is a game plan here that's been worked upon and guys know what they're doing. And I don't think we're seeing that at this point in time. And I guess an argument could be, if this is a real transition year where some of the experienced guys like Jorginho and others, for example, are getting phased out, why not use this season as a real season to impart your ideas? So if that means doing drastic things like having to turn towards a Hutchinson on the wings or use Chukwuemeka more, I thought that was a project that was sold to these young guys to begin with, so you should use them. I mean, Arteta seemed to come good from that, no? From phasing out your old guys like your Williams, Aubameyangs, Lacazettes, introducing new players. Yeah, the results were a bit iffy, but one thing you saw at least from Arsenal was a performance. And if the performance is good, that gives you some confidence going into the future that things can turn around and things will get better because you're seeing the infancy of a beautiful plan that's being introduced. And should Graham Potter not really accept that now and introduce that to the team? On one hand, I definitely think so and I agree he should. But on the other hand, I understand the consequences that can come from that. Even though you guys know I'm a big advocate for youth and stuff like that, one of the reasons is because of, listen, if I've got a top youngster right now that with 30 games in the season now will be even better for it in 2-3 years time, I'm going to take that if this guy's part of my future plans. But the reality is too, is that if you're still hoping to get Champions League football secured, well, if you're using young players, there are going to be times where you could be susceptible to their youthful inexperience. That could be in the form of a missed opportunity or overhitting a pass at a crucial time or turning off defensively. You know, to be a great player or a player that's ready to challenge your top four, it's not just having the techers and the skill. It's things like the physicality. It's things like the experience and how you deal with your mentals and pressurized moments in a game. These are the things that also are the intangibles that form like great players that are ready at a top four level. So I understand that if we were to turn towards that, at times we could be susceptible to those types of things. So I guess it's down to the individual hearing this about, you know, where you fall in this matter. Is this the risk you take or is this a risk you understand? On one hand, if it's a risk you do understand, then you understand maybe why Potter is in this crossroads situation where he's trying to find a balance for everything whilst making no one happy at the same time. I still don't have a definitive view and answer on that. All I can say is that I can understand why it isn't as simple, and a lot of times there's always pros and cons to everything, and sometimes to be objective you have to analyze what each the pro and the con is together. So even though these are signs and areas in which Graham Potter can definitely improve upon, at the same time, it's a right that he gets constantly criticised for personal things now. I don't really like personally when the conversation falls towards things like this where you're focusing on his antics on the touchline as if that really means anything, because hypothetically, if he were winning games right now, he'd be getting praise for his cool and calm demeanour on the field. And I just think that intangibles like that, you can't really be using them against managers. And for me, I think Potter needs to be who he is. And if he's the kind of PE teacher type of coach, let him do that, because that's what he's projecting to us. How he is with his players in the training ground is two completely different things. And the fact is, I'm going to go off his history. The fact that he's left good run at his previous clubs, that he's improved over time, over the years. You're looking at Brighton right now. He deserves all the credit for that Brighton team because he took over Chris Hutton in very similar circumstances to how Chris Hutton left that previous Brighton team, to how Tuchel left this current Chelsea team. They spent a season just getting out the deadwoods. They spent the next season after that introducing and playing his style of football. And then it was only the third season that you started to see the results of that as the players were in the second year of playing Graham Potter ball. And then now look at Brighton this season currently. Listen, they're top 10 in the league. They're one of the best teams in the country in terms of form right now. And they have incredible players worth a lot of money right now based on a strategy of hiring them young and getting Graham Potter to coach and develop them. So he can't be discredited, even though he's facing difficulties right now. It's not the first time he's faced them. It was the same thing when he joined Brighton in his first season, and it happened at Usran as well too. This naturally are the byproducts of taking over squads that aren't compatible in your image. And I guess anytime teams are in a transition year, it is very hard to really come to the best conclusion of how best do you move on and improve, because for everything negative and criticism I can give Graham Potter, on the other hand, there's also an objective reasoning behind why it's also difficult, and there's also an objective reasoning behind why the squad doesn't make things easier for anyone. I look at Thomas Tuchel, and like I was saying, I completely understand now why he decided to use a back three with 3 imposing centre-backs to give more physicality to that Chelsea team. Over the years, we heard Sarri talk about physicality. That's why, like, Alonso was important as a left-back of Emerson because he was tall. Tuchel spoke about that too. That's why we used a back three to help your Quavers and your Jorginhos in the team as well too. Physicality is an important thing that needs to be addressed right now. We've been trying to paper over these cracks for a long time, but I just don't think we can do it anymore now. And the only way we can do that is actually patience in terms of phasing out the old to bring in the new. But anyway, whilst I'm talking about Thomas Tuchel, listen, he didn't do any favours with the team he left for Graham Potter. He had a lot of power in saying this transfer window, and as I was saying at the start, he could have, during his time at this club, he could have used that to really bring in real change, really evolve and progress what we're doing. It felt like originally his system of trying to paper over the cracks became the identity of the team, which actually meant that eventually in the long time, we would get found out because under him, we didn't play the most expansive attacking football. Under him, we were also susceptible to form loss once key players were out the team. And under him too, we became quite predictable to the opposition, who played the exact same tactics against us, defending deep, letting us have the ball out wide, knowing the fact that we have no solutions to break those teams down. So he didn't do any favours in terms of leaving this current team for Graham Potter compared to how Frank Lampard once left the squad for him to take over all those seasons back. And the thing is, if someone as renowned as a Thomas Tuchel can also fall to the same trappings of formal space and all these things I've been talking about, why does it make it different for any other manager? I don't think so, and I think this is where the criticism around Graham Potter is getting a bit too personal and isn't as fair, as because Graham Potter doesn't really fall into the same type of stereotypical views of a manager, it means he's not good enough, and his character now is really getting criticised. Like, for example, because he's not shouting in training sessions must mean that that's going to transmit weak energy to a team. No, I think that's conflating 2 points. I think that we already had mentally weak players that have shown now over a few seasons that they can't keep up a fight throughout a whole season with the same intensity. They can't do that. Over the past few years, we've been a team that has to excel for one part of a season to get to where we need to get to at the end of the season. It's not being continuous sustained pressure of intensity, but which has to be the case right now if we want to catch up to City, Arsenal, and teams around us. Right now, I feel like Potter and his coaching team need to just have some confidence now about what they're really trying to do and build towards that unashamedly. If that means we have to turn towards youth, accept the consequences of, okay, maybe we could be susceptible to results, but at least we know in the long term, these guys will be the next cornerstones of the team. And if this is the sacrifice you have to take right now, we understand that. But I think having like a clear and concise message is what the fan base needs to have a sense of, faith in the manager right now. Because I feel the same frustration. If I see us play one way, then we play a different way the next game afterwards, irrespective of injuries as well too. It does get quite frustrating. For example, someone like an Azpi, yeah, he has his experience, but the experience doesn't really mean anything if he can't keep up in a foot race. There's guys like Rankin where, listen, unexperienced, and that is the risk. Let's not pretend it isn't. But at least, in terms of things like the dynamism that you need, hopefully that could help his teammates ahead of him, because it's a team game. If your right back can't bring that offence from deep, that's going to affect your winger, who's not going to touch the ball as much, who's not going to get as involved. That's how all these little mini issues can compound to be even greater, which has an even more disastrous effect throughout the entirety of the team. So in my opinion, even though Graham Potter is not flawless at all, and his coaching staff as well, they aren't, I can't hold them to what I'm seeing with my own 2 eyes entirely, knowing what can happen over time, what Potter does bring with backing behind him, why our owners did decide to hire him to begin with, because we invested a lot of money, gave this guy a massive long-term contract as well too. In FFP years, talks of guys wanted to see him get sacked and moved on. You're just being too emotional in my opinion. You haven't thought about the replacements you'd want to see, and you haven't thought whether those replacements are really going to bring any uplift into this team. I feel like you could bring in anyone right now and it wouldn't do anything, and it does matter, yeah? there was a time when Pep Guardiola was available in the market. One of the reasons why he rejected the advances made from Roman Abramovich was that he felt like we just did not have the squad at all for his image, and the time that would be needed to create that squad, it would have been pointless and no needs, and I guarantee he would have faced the same criticisms that guys like Porter are getting right now. Instead, he went to Man City, where it'd be easier to transition his footballing ideas into that team, and now the rest is history. You know, I'm bringing this example up to show just how important it is about why time is needed, because it's not as simple. And if it was that easy, Guardiola wouldn't care about details like that. Would have hired and signed for the best club that paid him the best money, knowing the fact that any manager can do this. But it's a lot deeper than that. It takes unity from your owners, and then your coaches and staff, and then your managers, and then your players as well too. It's a trickle-down effect from the top, and I feel like that's what we need to remember here, right? Yeah, the owners have brought Porter in for the long term. We're facing a lot of short-term indifferences and bad results, but they're not going to define us forever. When Porter is able to introduce some of the players that he needs in his team, like Enzo, that is an upgrade to Jorginho, I think is obvious in terms of physicality, ball playing, and just how he improves his team around him. This is the right step in the right direction. And this signing isn't just coming from Porter, it's coming from the staff that Bodie has hired. We have to remember too, not only is Graham Potter also needing time to advance and to change things, he's only been here for 3 months, but at the same time, the nature and the identity of the club around him is changing. You know, we're bringing in new staff like your Vivels, the right technical advisors, the right scouts. We're trying to build and create in a new way. We're scouting and approaching signings in a new way too. A lot is happening in this season that for me just really exemplifies it to be even more of a transition year than any other season prior. So I need to have a bit more faith and patience shown. And I'm not going to hold Potter to these standards right now, because it's difficult for most managers to find the best solution when you're not left with too much to begin with. So to give a conclusion, I think Graham Potter does need more time. He needs more patience. And I understand that a lot of these are going to be natural. I understand that a lot of the bad results are naturally going to be a thing, because we saw signs of this team being in the decline since the end of last season. It's not a recent thing. We can't be naive. We can't pretend. We can't only see what we want to see. Yeah, a lot of people are upset Tuchel left. You can be upset. No one's telling you can't be. But you can't be misprofiling your energy towards Graham Potter, because I don't think it's quite fair, to be honest. The reality that has to be accepted in football today is that it's not like it was back in the day, where if you had the most money, you could buy your way out of any issue and instantly challenge. Every club has money in the league now. That's why having an identity, having a philosophy, building towards that is the only way to get real success now in this Premier League. And I think that's one thing that Bodie and the management have understood. These guys know what they're doing. These are natural by effects of what needs to happen. And I think this is a new thing for us Chelsea fans, because under the previous board, it was only ever short-term effects and results. That was all that ever mattered. There was nothing really being built in the long term, because you could just use your money and wealth to buy someone else to maintain that trajectory, even though we were always taking 2 steps forward and taking 1 step back. We're doing things completely differently, and I feel like maybe the hard times will humble us going into the future. And we'll look back after this season, you know, we're Chelsea fans. We're going to be supporting this club till the day we die. In 2 years' time, 3 years' time, we'll look back at this time with completely different eyes and context. And I'm sure a lot of people will understand why this type of sacrifice was needed and worth it in the long term. Yeah? Hopefully Enzo's coming in. Nkunku secured. We've got incredible talent sound like Andre Santos and many others. You know, Potter, now that some of these guys are here, blood them. Andre Santos has a big reputation. He's the type of guy I'd be introducing into our midfield right now to get him acclimatized and ready, using his energy and profile to help this team. These are the tough decisions you make. If some of the experienced guys can't do it for you, phase them out right now. Maybe that's the type of boldness that we need to see. It's not as simple. Even someone like Arteta, when he first took over Arsenal, he didn't instantly kick out Aubameyang and others. He relied upon them for at least like a season and a bit before slowly phasing them out when he realised, I can't get anywhere if I'm looking to please everyone at this club. I need to please myself ultimately, and I need to please what we're trying to build at Arsenal. And I think maybe that is the type of energy that Graham Potter can take from this current situation to help us get out this rut possibly. And I think hopefully the only way to really do that right now is relying upon a great January window that can really help us push on, signing key players at the right time, and hopefully then try and catch up the points as the season goes on. Listen, I'm not here to be giving like some black and white answers. It's a very complicated situation at this football club. For every negative, there's a con. For every positive, there's a con as well too. That's what happens during transition years. Yeah, I've been watching my club for too many years. I've been watching football for so many years to see the patterns, to see what it's like. And I just think, unfortunately, even though it sucks, we might have to get used to it for this season in hopes of better things going into the future. So you guys, there's some of my thoughts and opinions. Share yours below. I'm NEFC, this is BlueLionsTV. Catch you guys later. Cool.